I have gone through every War of the Worlds video on their YouTube, every question in their Discord FAQ, every Trello card on their roadmap, and even did a live Q&A with the developer himself, in order to make the most definitive and up-to-date video I can, encompassing the most standout updates and everything we know about this game so far. Its origins, changes, current state, team members, and more. New people are discovering this project and joining its awesome community every week, and I see a lot of similar questions coming in that have been answered many times before. There is a lot of excitement and things to take in surrounding this game, so hopefully this can act as a reliable source for people who are just finding out about it for the first time, or those of you who simply wish to confirm that you know everything that there is to know. I want a disclaimer that everything shown here are from publicly available sources. They do have a Patreon providing more exclusive content and even closed testing right now for their members who make a one-time $100 pledge. So disclosing any of that information elsewhere is unethical. Also, if you would like to see my initial reactions to this content and the live Q&A, it's all there on my channel for you. With all of the information I'm cramming into this video, I figured the best way to serve it up would be to break it down into chapters, chronologically focusing on one topic at a time. So if you can't make it through everything, you can easily come back later and pick up where you left off, or simply skip ahead to the topic you would rather know more about. But if you're ready for the ride, then kick your feet up, grab a cozy drink and warm blanket by a rainy window. It is October after all, my personal favorite, as I take you through the inception, evolution, and continued development of the game, the tripods, the players, the features, the Easter eggs, my suggestions, and some favorites I've handpicked from the community itself. I'm Void, and this is the making of the first film-accurate War of the Worlds video game. Back in 2005, War of the Worlds hit the silver screen, becoming one of the most iconic remakes in film history, leaving an impact on the hearts of the many who experienced it. Fast forward 16 long years, and something new is bringing all of those moviegoers back together once more. On April 21st, 2021, a promising video emerges on the internet, raking in over 500,000 views and marking the first real possibility of being able to relive the dazzling terror which the film brought, but this time experiencing it in first person for yourself in the form of a video game. Other War of the Worlds games were attempted before, but none were quite like this. What started as a passion project would quickly become what is now one of the most anticipated indie survival horror games of 2023, gaining a stadium of followers, thousands of community members with backers, beta testers, fan artists, and drawing in millions of eyes in the process. I say that release time period tentatively, but it seems most likely it will be 2023. At its core, this is a game where you play as a civilian in the events of the film. You scavenge for supplies to keep your stats from depleting, hide from the tripods by staying out of sight and not getting zapped, crushed, or harvested for your delicious human blood, and ultimately win the game by lasting a week in this nightmare where the invaders eventually get sick and die, just like in the film. There are plenty of other ways to die as well, but we will see them later. Something I found really fascinating about this game was how it started. So let's go back in time to where it all began. The year is 2010, and a 15-year-old Rafael Fernandez daydreams of someday becoming a pilot and firefighter. He always loved games and had an affinity for simulation types for their immersive experiences. After discovering people making mods for the games he played, he decided he wanted it as well and began to teach himself how to 3D model. It wasn't long before he would want to go deeper into design and eventually found his way into programming. It was around this time when he found a German game about emergency situations, and before long, he had begun modding the game himself. For the next 6 years, he would teach himself how to add the city of his home state of New York to the game, building a reputation and supportive community because of his growing abilities along the way. Wanting to dive deeper into game development, Raf had attended Full Sail University for game art, but left soon after, realizing college was not a fit for him. He wanted to make his own games, not be pigeonholed into making someone else's. After some time and feeling satisfied with his accomplishments in modding, Raf chose to pursue a game idea he'd dreamt up in his junior year of high school. An open-world simulation about playing as an emergency responder. He aptly named it Emerge NYC, which I think is a brilliant play on words. With some time under his belt and a supportive community around him and a dream within him, he left his day job as an electrician to become a full-time indie developer for his game. It's an emergency responder simulator, where the focus is not on any missions, but dynamic events that take place randomly, and you guessed it, different New York cities. Raph would go on to release the game on Steam on November 3rd, 2016. It has since pulled in over 3,000 reviews and still has an active player base in the game's Discord community. But all of this is leading up to a destined moment where Raph would fall right into the idea of making a War of the Worlds game. Which brings us back to that day of that first upload on April 21st. While Raph was working on Emerge NYC that day, out of curiosity, he dragged a 3D model of one of the film's tripods, which he happened to have on his computer, into his digitized city. And then, and there, a spark went off. See, Raph was one of those many moviegoers who always had a space in their heart for the film ever since it aired. The difference was, now he had the tools to make this untapped idea a reality. With this monumental merging of passion and capability, Raph went to work, uploading that first video the same day. Even though the first visualization is fairly simple, it gives me chills to look back on the video and see the rawness, to see what he was seeing for the first time, and just imagine the prospect of all that would come to follow, as the sound he pulled from the film played over the footage. It's a moment that creatives dream of, a stroke of genius, discovering something not presently existing that should be, and you are determined and able to bring it to life. With this passion fanning the flame, Raph began posting updates of his new project almost daily for the next week, and this is where the development journey begins. What kind of game modes are there? First up, there's free roam. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the main things the player will need to focus on are their 4 stats: health, hunger, thirst, and sleep, all of which deplete over time. The only one of these that will not kill you if it reaches 0 is sleep. The player will just fall asleep where they stand and wake up a short time later with a diminished sleep stat. But overall, you just spawn somewhere random and try to last the 7 days. Secondly, there's chapter mode. This will incorporate scenes from the movie, such as before the first storm, the machine coming out of the ground, the plane crash scene, etc. However, there's no real campaign to the game, so don't go in expecting a Last of Us experience. Rather, the events will be like objectives that you can find. If you want to see one of the specific scenes from the movie, that's what the chapters are for. Immediately after an event, the gameplay will just transition back into a free roam style. Thirdly, and something that I think will be the most interesting to experience, will be the multiplayer options. Yes, there's more than one. It will have 2 modes called Survival and Extermination. Survival is basically free roam with other people. You can work together to increase your chances of survival, but be careful who you turn your back on, as the biggest threat might become who you let into your group. Extermination is a survivors versus invaders mode, or humans versus aliens. It has the same elements of survival, but now players can choose to be on the alien team, controlling the tripods. The tripods will have a HUD for the players operating them. Finally, if you just want to sit back and play God, watching destruction unfold like you just spawned some disasters in The Sims, there's cinematic mode, where you can fly around as the camera. There will also be sandbox elements to this, think 7 Days to Die, where you can control the parameters of things like how many tripods spawn, how many days this goes on for, etc. I believe you will also be able to do those things in free roam as well. Now, with a better understanding of the game, we can dive into our next topic, which is likely everyone's favorite, the tripods. They started as a mere model rising out of the ground without any animations or life to them. In the very next video Raph uploaded the following day, the tripods got their first animations, along with the laser arms now being used and firing at random spots. The video blew up and hit over 1 million views. The tripods quickly got their land legs, and we see their first walking animations in the next 2 uploads. Heat rays leave temporary sear marks on the ground, and the rising animation gets an improvement. In May, spotlights are added, and we see the very first new variation of tripods, along with the walking and general animations being improved all around. This is also before the tripods have their shields, but that wraps it up for notable updates in the channel for 2021. 9 months later, and a baby trailer is born. I mean, on February 22nd, 2022, we see the first official 4-minute and 36-second trailer, and this is the first video I discovered in my quest for interesting indie games, but I'm not yet a part of this timeline because past me hadn't seen it yet.
What the hell am I looking at?
In March, we see a really nice shot of a tripod walking off into the sunset in search of a pack of cigarettes, and he never comes home. Oh, I'm just kidding. He comes home. He's just a little angry. We see the first probe entering a house and new harvesting tentacles. It should be noted that the probe is not a dynamic event and is only scripted for certain locations. Finally, April brings us the first video of the tripod shields. May is where things really begin to heat up on multiple fronts. At this point, it's been a full year since the game's inception, and as much as he was able to accomplish already, the updates that come in the following 4 months, some to even more than that. And that goes for the tripods and every other topic we're going to cover in this video. Now, before we go on, it is good to mention that Raph had been working with 2 other individuals in the beginning by the names of Slendy and Deadram. They had done some early rigging and animation work. We know this because at the end of my Q&A, he gave these 2 a shout out, saying that they really helped him get the game off the ground, but also that they aren't involved anymore. When I followed up with him on this detail, his response was essentially that once this grew from a fan project into something that could be lucrative, the prospect of potential legal repercussions scared them away. Now, Raph has said he plans to make the game free to play and even has an alternative tripod model in his back pocket in case he does attract any unwanted legal attention. Though it would be a real bummer to see the film accurate tripods go away. So with that said, the scope of the game continues to increase and Raph keeps rising to the challenge. May brings us a tripod makeover with some better details as clearly seen in the feet. Here's what they looked like before. Alright, that's enough. Move along now. Their line of sight is improved as they receive their first custom heat ray and walking sounds. Note, the sounds are still subject to change, and we've seen many revisions to this day. Raph and the community wants things to be as close to the film as possible while remaining unique. Audio is easily protected by copyright, so having custom sounds basically avoids that trouble altogether. We see the first implementation of cages, which is just awesome. As well as probably what is most important and visually noticeable is the tripod legs now get inverse kinematics, or IK. It's basically fancy speak for the tripods now walk in a more physically realistic manner, like you would expect to see if they were real. And their steps dynamically adjust to where and what they are stepping on. What? And for this, we have a person named Risto to thank. He's a programmer who connected with Raph and is handling the tentacle and IK work. One other detail that makes it into my list of favorites is that volumetric fog is added that begins to cloak the bottom of the tripod legs the farther they are from view, which absolutely helps sell how magnificently large they feel. It's June 20th. I have just discovered this game and posted my first video about it, and little was I aware the impact I would have in the coming weeks. Skip to July and their shields get an upgrade to what they still are today. They are much more noticeable than the old ones and have this really cool effect of silhouetting the tripod from a distance when in battle. Heat ray sounds are now delayed based on distance to create more realism. The tentacles get reworked as they now sway with the motion of the tripod and have a new harvesting animation, which I think looks a little bit more realistic. But that's not all, because they can now pick up and throw vehicles. That is, if they didn't stop on you first. Another fun feature. However, if you'd rather rely on speed over hiding, be warned, vehicles are noisy and tripods can now target you in them as well. To continue making things more tense for the player, gunshots can also draw their attention. August rolls around and Raph wakes up choosing violence. As if last month wasn't enough, the tripod now gets an AI buff, making them more aggressive and even better at detection. Call me a masochist, but this month holds some of my favorite updates for the lanky lads and this game yet. And I'm not just saying that because I was featured on the channel with these updates. Okay, that might have helped. All the chaos and stomping from the tripods now cause environmental damage, clearly seen by these trees toppling, compounded by the fact that they now can also use heat rays independent of one another, and more frequent at that. New sounds are given to the rays, as well as point of impact and death zapping sounds. One of my favorite features added to the heat rays is that they now leave the ground charred where they hit. It's something I had suggested, and it's just really cool to see it implemented. Screams can alert the tripods, whether they come from NPCs or from you, as the game can pick up audio from your mic. And this leads to some really cool and probably the most terrifying AI improvements. The tripods can now prioritize targets, and whenever they spot a new one, they sound off their horn, alerting other nearby tripods. On top of that, they can move and work together. So if you see one, there's a good chance another might be trailing close behind, scanning where the first may have missed. And now for what is one of possibly the coolest updates to this game, we get a new tripod, the UberPod. This is the canonical name for them, as stated by a Discord member or anyone who read the behind-the-scenes cinefacts from the film. The quote reads, "As tripods rise from the water, Spielberg called for a new look for the machines. We developed what we called the Uber tripod look," said Robert Marinick. Marinick has also done visuals for The Avengers, Men in Black, Pacific Rim, and many others. The Ubers have larger features such as their legs, height, and head. They also have an extra set of lights and an extended field of view. And to set themselves apart from the regular tripods even further, they have their own unique sounds and horns. It's somewhere around these weeks that two new people connect with Raph, David Baggett and Kanicki. These two fellows are responsible for sound effects, specifically a lot of the horns we're getting now. IK is further improved, and we get a really cool look at the new cages. The heat ray damage is further expounded upon, removing grass and leaving searing fires in its wake as well now, which you can die to, by the way, when suggested. I thought it would be much more effective for the tripod spotlights to be brighter, and I was surprised once again to be featured for this suggestion as they bumped those puppies up. Before, the tripods would almost drift by you in darkness, and it was hard to tell exactly how close they were to being on top of you. Now, when they're looking at you, you know beyond the shadow of a doubt how much danger you're in, as it creates so much more of a threatening presence. A delay has also been added to the tripods responding to the horn summon, and again, it's the attention to detail that keeps me coming back for more with this game's progress. I could also see this being even more stress-inducing for the player. Before, the tripod may have left immediately. Now, we don't exactly know how long it takes for the tripod to peel its gaze away from its current hunt, so you could be peeing your pants on the floor of some random house while the tripod spotlights search for you a little bit longer. That brings us up to speed with their public YouTube videos, but I was able to squeeze a lot more out of the Q&A I did. Different tripod types appear over each day, as you would expect. First day is just the warrior tripods causing damage, then come the harvesters and UberPods sequentially. As it stands, each tripod has its own utility. So warriors destroy with their heat rays, harvesters scoop up people, and UberPods Uber. After day 5, they will begin to randomly become sick, causing them to stumble around a little more and their lights to dim and flicker. You'll also see birds freely flying around and perched on their heads, just like in the film. If you don't take them down with weaponry, which we will also talk about, they will eventually fall and die on their own. If one captures you and you have a grenade in your inventory, there is a chance you will blow up the tripod and survive the harvest. But I'm pretty sure this only specifically applies to when you're in the cage and you get scooped up by the tentacle inside. But who knows, perhaps you will still be able to shoot and lob grenades while you are being picked up by the tentacle. Even if it would be extremely hard to hit your target, I believe it would be hilarious and amazing to include. I personally would want to go down fighting. Not my blood. Not my blood. Not my blood. Not my blood. For those wondering, Raph clarified that he doesn't plan on making the interior of these tripods. However, players will be pulled into a vat of potentially orange liquid, where perhaps aliens are looking in at you. Speaking of aliens, they're not implemented yet. We have gotten some really cool looks at them, but there's not much more I can say. Raph really wants to get them right, so he's kind of holding them till the end. But when the tripods send their probe into a house and they don't find anyone, there's a chance that they will come down and look through the house just like in the film. If a probe is looking through the house and does find you, it will then send down tentacles to try and grab you from the house, supposedly. We haven't seen it working yet, but that's what word on the street is, as per Mo, the Discord moderator. Hi Mo. If an alien does see you, however, they will melee you. There also does seem to be hiding mechanics planned, similar to Dead by Daylight, like in a wardrobe, closet, or even under a bed. Distraction mechanics also seem to be planned, like using a fire or sound to throw off the tripods, or maybe even aliens too, but we will see when we get there. Another great source of information comes from a fellow YouTuber just across the pond, Kit. He did another Q&A, but this time with Raph and Risto as well. It was really cool, and you could see some developer things taking place in Unity. That's in the description if you want to check that out. One thing we learned from that is that the basement is the only safe place if you want to avoid getting stomped on. So when a tripod foot comes crashing through your ceiling, that's where you're going to want to be. But that wraps it up for the tripod section. You did it. You're a trooper. Speaking of troopers, maybe that will be our next topic. The military. Well, let's take a look at how the military and NPCs have evolved. In July, military were added, and they consist of infantry holding rifles and RPGs, Humvees or Hummers, LAVs, which are all-terrain vehicles, and tanks. And if we look to the skies, there appear to be two kinds of planes. We have fighter jets, and what looks like warthogs, as well as Apache helicopters that are going like a bajillion miles an hour. Did you see those things? Damn! They have their own AI that leads them to engage with the tripods by driving to them and opening fire once they are in range. State officials like police were asked about, and Raph says they will likely leave their duty, fleeing to go find their families like everyone else. It's only going to be the government fighting back at the invaders and maintaining a sense of authority. If you aren't near these battles, you will see lighting and hear sounds in the distance, as well as tracer rounds that were added later in August. As the military gets wiped out, the battle dynamics will begin to die out as well, until things return to an eerie silence. Something else expanded upon in August was new colors and variants for the labs. If you're looking to find a safe haven in a military base, fortified in response to the attackers, then you're out of luck. Raph doesn't believe you'd realistically be able to set them up amidst the destruction, and once you see how quickly these tripods can cover ground, I think you might agree. Remember, there is nothing they leave living in their wake. However, when the shields eventually fall, military reinforcements will arrive. He did say that he may add destroyed battlefields at some point, which would be really nice to see, as it would also continue to fuel how the world as you knew it is changing shape around you. Players would also potentially be able to find gear or weapons. Most of the military will be wiped out by days 2 and 3, so this would be a nice trade-off, being able to scavenge remains from the war as you find it, because I can imagine the game becoming increasingly chaotic, unruly, and lonely by that point. Who knows, maybe even the people around you would become a threat. Speaking of, let's talk NPCs. There will be a bunch of people roaming streets or running away from the tripods or simply occupying houses. In August, they were upgraded to have random running speeds, which I thought was a nice detail. They can be killed and looted, but best be careful when you pull that trigger. As stated before, tripods may hear you. Something to make your decision a little easier though is a cool detail Kit uncovered in his Q&A. NPCs will have visual cues to whether they're holding loot or not. You might see some wearing a backpack or even a gun strapped over their shoulder. And to answer the question I alluded to earlier, yes, NPCs can be hostile. In fact, hostile groups will eventually form, although you shouldn't rule out singular bad actors either. But if you gun down some seemingly innocent, lootless individual, we won't judge you. You can just say your hunger is low and you swore that you saw them stuff a candy bar in their pocket. Or maybe you're sadistic and you're thinking, Void, why would I just eat the candy bar? When I'm staring at a main course, I could just tie them in the basement and eat them slowly. Wow, that got dark fast. Not something you would ever see me doing, by the way. Who do I look like to you? While I've seen absolutely zero evidence for cannibalism, you will be able to have NPC followers. Hopefully they just don't block doorways or simply disappear for days at a time like certain other companions.
I am sworn to carry your...
NPCs won't just be mindless zombies. Although in some early videos, it's hard to tell the difference. They have things to do and places to try to get to, so they don't just end up standing around. You might find some walking about their homes or running down streets or even looting stores. I haven't seen it, but apparently if you drive your car through a crowd, they will try to take the car from you, which I think is just awesome. And yet another feature that Raph is so passionately trying to align with the film. Since we've been talking about vehicles and weapons, let's full throttle, let's lock and load. All right, here's our next topic. So far, we have bikes, cars, and for those of you who want to Rick Grimes it and manifest the film Cowboys vs. Aliens, there's even horses. I'm personally most excited to hit some gnarly tricks on a bike in the middle of the apocalypse. But Void, you ask? You showed us tanks and stuff. Can't we drive them and shoot down the daddy longlegs? And I answer you back, no, you fool. Let me say, I think we would all love to drive tanks and wage war against these tripods, but Raph really seems to want to stick to realism as much as he can, even though it's a video game. His thought process is that no random citizen would know how to jump into a tank and operate it, which I think is fair. I mean, that ain't doing nothing to their shields anyway, but I think it's also more than that. The central point of tension and everything he structures his game around hinges on how hopeless a player is. However, I see both sides and understand the desire to want to blast the tripods in retaliation. Perhaps in something like the extermination mode, it would be appropriate to let survivors be able to operate military vehicles. Or another thought, perhaps there could even be classes of characters to pick from, like a soldier. But we are getting a little ahead of ourselves. We will talk about character customizations and player things a little later. In July, abandoned vehicles were added to spawn on the map. They can be repaired to become functional again. And in the Q&A, we learned that the part needed is a solenoid, another nod to the film. More good news for players. Wow, I don't say that very much here, do I? Raph doesn't believe that the game is long enough to have item decay. So that means you never have to worry that something you repaired, found, or crafted will ever break. There will be a small amount of crafting, but we will get into that in our next chapter. The only real tool I've seen is a flashlight, and while it won't break, the battery is supposed to run out upon use. The player also has a default storage capacity of 10 items. Every item only takes up 1 slot, and some, like food or water, are stackable. Though we don't know the full limit of each stack, space can be increased if you find a backpack. As far as weapons go, we have guns, bats, bows, crossbows, and an axe. Guns may see minimal attachments like a scope, but he's made it very clear he doesn't want to make this into an involved FPS. But it's very cool to see both silent weapons and forms of transportation for those thief builds among us. This will also make it easier to hunt for food, which leads us to our next chapter, environment and the wildlife. In the first video, the nighttime is void and dark. Now, typically, I would like that kind of thing, but it feels so empty here. However, by May, we get to see some nice nighttime shots with some awesome stars above. July brings us dynamic weather and collision-based particles, audio-occluded sounds, meaning things will begin to sound muffled if out of range or obscured by something like a wall, and the very first implementation of red weed. It's still being developed, so it looks a little wacky, but it's exciting to see, and it naturally grows over time. In step with the weed, August brings this evil, red, volumetric fog that grows over time. The daytime lighting is improved and once more at the end of August. And this is where I think it begins to look pretty satisfying during the day. Raph implements a new vegetation engine and rendering system, and this also helps greatly improve the look of the environment, with hundreds of unique rocks and veggies. The cherry on top of all of this is that the grass is now GPU rendered. How many kilometers of in-game grass is your GPU going to have to render, you ask? In the Q&A, Raph told us that the map is 2 square kilometers, or 0.77 square miles. He is being conscious of GPU load by using techniques such as occlusion culling and render distance, so the game only renders what's in view and drops off quality with range, so that's nice to see. Map, fun fact, Raph said that one of the maps in Emerge NYC is the bare bones of the map in this world. It's also the same one that he imported the first tripod into on that first day. I thought that was really neat to learn, as the moment of Inception will be forever sealed in this game. He was also asked about the procedural generation, as many fans of this genre have come to love, myself included. It's something he really wanted to do at first, but he feels it's beyond him as a developer at this time, and would rather focus on handcrafting the world and giving it life in his own way. In keeping with realism, there will also not be a minimap on the HUD, but players will be able to find a map in-game. Something that might be hidden from the map, however, but we know will be in-game, are underground bunkers. To dispel camping your way through the game in one, both NPCs and aliens will look for and search through them as well. Something else you won't see on the map, but is very apparent in the sky, are lightning storms that indicate where more tripods are spawning. Birds will also fly toward these newly spawned tripods as well, and those are undoubtedly some of my favorite details. They continue to support the sense of danger and inevitability, whether it's in the forefront or constantly lingering in the back of the player's mind. And just in case, after everything we've covered so far, you thought there couldn't be anything left to harm you, there's still the threat of wildlife. But let's just take a breather. You've made it this far. Take a deep breath. Think about your favorite ice cream. Think about a time where you were experiencing complete bliss. Because that's all gone. Now back to the danger. We got wolves, deer, pigs, bears, beets, and Battlestar Galactica. Okay, those last two were a lie, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous in real life. As you might expect, the predatory animals will pose a threat to the player, but some of them can be hunted and eaten to regain hunger stats. As I mentioned before, this means there will also be a small amounts of crafting in the game, like building a small fire to cook up your kill. People were asking a lot about larger building mechanics, and it doesn't really seem like Raph wants to put energy into something like that. Perhaps you could construct a small tent in the woods. This is just speculation, but if we remember how Raph feels about realism, no one would really be able to build a base or a log cabin while these tripods are scanning and obliterating just about everything. And even if you did, it would likely be a waste of time and use of stat resources. Things could always change as the game progresses, however. We haven't even gotten to the most important part yet. You. Who are you? Who is the player? Right now, Raph just has a standard PUBG-looking white guy as a stand-in, but there will be character customization in the future. How in-depth that's going to be, we will just have to wait and see. But he has talked about reworking it and devoting attention to it. Something he has stated, but I think would be a real unfortunate decision, would be not to include third-person perspective. It seems like he didn't like his implementation of it in Emerge NYC, and that's what's making him hesitant, but I hope this is truly not the case, or that his spirits lift around the idea of trying to add it. There's definitely a call for it in the community, and what's the point of having a character customizer if you don't actually get to fully enjoy seeing your player in the world? I just think it would be a big missed opportunity for the gameplay, but also for those of us who want to take really cool cinematic shots from our experiences. I know cinematic mode is there, but it's not exactly the same thing. Plus, I'm sure a ton of people would love to craft up a person that looks just like Ray, or themselves, celebrities, other characters from other games, or goofy, fun characters, and take shots of them in the world, because that's what gamers do. I would love to see Ronald McDonald survive War of the Worlds. Okay, that might be asking a little bit much, but if there's no mustaches, I'm not playing. Something I picked up on in one of the earlier videos, the first 5 minutes pre-alpha, we appear to be a kid. We wake up in what looks like a young teen's room. Making our way out to the kitchen, we can see that we just come up to the light switch on the wall, and we are certainly shorter than the fence in the front yard. So whether or not Raph plans to have multiple characters to select from, or simply enough customization to be able to drastically change your age or height, I 100% welcome all of it, as it would provide more experiences for roleplaying and replayability. This section is basically scooping up any extra features we haven't touched on yet that really help tie everything together. Oh yeah, and something I haven't mentioned, but this entire time, the power grid is down, just like in the film, as clearly seen in the pre-alpha video from April 2021. We see the first version of the menu. Players can drag doors open and zoom the camera in by holding right mouse. The door dragging is a nice sneaky touch, but Raph recently said he plans to remove it. Sad face. I believe it's because of the bugs he's encountering with it. Maybe one day we'll see it return and functioning. In the ferry attack video from May, we see that swimming is a thing, and I love it. I hate games that present you with bodies of water and no way to traverse them as you would want to by simply swimming. July of 2022 brings a new menu system and loading screens. These keep polishing up as more time goes on and more people keep joining his community and offer their own submissions. Another cool feature added are the cries of NPCs, be they off in the distance or from inside the cages, and they are unsettling. Catching up to August, one of my favorite features is added. Clothes from zapped humans float away. This is so cool. It's such an amazingly poignant detail that makes the horror more real. It reminds you that these are other people being zapped. Okay, they're NPCs, but just they're real. They're real to me. The cinematic camera mechanics also see some improvement. Raph has mentioned on many occasions that he's building things to be completely random, that the dynamics don't revolve around the player. So this could translate to mean aliens could be probing a house before you get there, which would just add other layers of caution to the game. He's also trying to improve the heat ray targeting system to make things more cinematic and random as well. In the Q&A, he said, right now, if you're the only thing the tripod sees, it's not going to miss. And I do want to make it so that if you're running with a crowd of people, they get zapped first. Something I love to see in multiplayer games is proximity chat, and that will be a thing. I can only imagine the amount of hilarious content or immersive experiences a game like this could yield. Imagine running away from a tripod with someone you met, and you hear their screams get cut short by a heat ray. Or perhaps you're trying to sabotage a nearby group of survivors you located so you can take their gear. You begin yelling, calling attention to the tripod. We'll just have to see how people react when shit hits the fan. Finally, let's talk performance. Raph is currently hitting 60 FPS on his build, which is likely higher end than most, and as he mentioned before, is doing things to better optimize the game for lower spec PCs. Right now, some issues he's dealing with are the tripod AI and IK eating up most of the resources, working out objectives for the player, and the player lean mechanic to poke their head around corners. He also made it clear that modding will not be supported, as it would simply cost him too much extra time to implement. Also, one thing that they are still struggling with is exactly how to have a tripod search the house. Pathing for the probe and tentacles to come through the house while moving realistically seems to be the challenge here. So, there you have it. That's everything we know about the game so far. Where it started to where it is now. And I'm sure by the time you see this, a lot more things will have been added or tweaked. But hey, don't be sad. The video's not over. We still have all the bonus content.
Oh, what the heck was that? Where am I?
Oh, what are y'all looking at me for? Oh boy.
Hey, sorry for interrupting.
Ooh, hold on.
Oh, I hope you're having a really good day. Oh no! I know I haven't posted in a while. I've been a little busy. Just wanted to say, I now have memberships. See? Oh no. Well, if you want to support it, it's just $1.99 a month. And if you, hey, come on, man. Let's go. Let's get out of the street. Yeah, over here. Yeah, that's good.
And as I was saying, if all you can afford is free, then I'm just glad you're here.
Oh shoot. Now, if you'll excuse me. Sir, that's not your kid. You got the wrong one. It's okay, it happens.
Some of these features I was able to pull directly from his Trello board, which is publicly available if you want to give it a look. There is one question that is probably the most asked when someone finds this game, and it is, will it be on console? And the answer to that is no. Well, it's about 99% certain that it won't be. Porting takes a lot of expertise, otherwise it costs a pretty penny to have someone else do it, which also gets a third party involved in the paperwork. Of course, Raph and everyone involved would like to see this game reach so many of the people in his community who don't currently have PCs, but it's pretty much entirely up to the success of the game post-launch for the foreseeable future. Although, something I have kept from you guys this entire time, I know. I apologize. Raph has unveiled that he is speaking with a potential investor. Not to go on too much of a side tangent, but this mystery Mr. Moneybags man is also doing music for the game. Apparently, he has a whole soundtrack put together, but hasn't shown it to Raph yet. So some very interesting things going on there. Will be interesting to see what unfolds. Keep your ear to the ground on that one. Secondly, Raph has made it clear that mobile is 100% not in the plans. But enough about the bummer news. Let's talk about the cool stuff coming our way. These are all things I found through their Trello and whatnot. So, for military, We have further improved AI. Raph was asked if there would be military convoys, and as it stands, they're not implemented, but he said he may add them, and destroyed battlefields. For the player, we have close explosion disorientation. That's awesome. Ladders and climbing, most likely for intended things. A free look camera, small crafting mechanics, and red weed slowing the player down. Speaking of red weed, for the environment, we have improved distribution of it. Probably means both in application and appearance. Toxic red weed smoke, affecting the player's health. Red weed turning white over time. Ooh, I like that. Expanded map. That is amazing. Added and improved cities. That is like double amazing. Destructible buildings. That is thrice amazing. Animals. I'm assuming this just means adding them and making sure they all work. Caves. Potentially something that Kit uncovered in his Q&A. For the tripods and aliens. Escape cage and destroy tripod logic. The next thing to come for the cages will be the distraught NPCs filling them, and the tentacle that reaches down for the next juicy human. Needle tentacles that drain human blood. Sick, yo. And things we talked about before with the aliens, about them meleeing you, the hiding mechanics from them, and the potential distraction mechanics that are supposedly planned. Likely things like fire or maybe sound to throw them off your trail. Now NPCs, they have a lot coming, and this is actually really cool. We have evac points. Probably places they'll go to be rescued. I'm not 100 on this, so if you know, let me know. Populating inside homes. Recruitment. Maybe this means they're actually joining the military forces. That would be wild to see them like run off and jump in a caravan, or maybe a potential convoy that's potentially coming, and some NPC that you just saw is now wielding an RPG, and you go. George, dialogue. We're getting dialogue, and this is really cool. Raph said you'll have options when engaging with them. So things like having them follow you, or robbing them, telling them to throw their weapons down, things of that nature. Ragdolling, that's always fun. Working together, crowds that will take the car from you, needs, behavior, and hostility improvements. Quite the opposite, Void. Robbing the player, that's really cool. That would be neat to see. Visual cues for NPCs with loot, thanks to Kit. And something else, thanks to Kit, potentially dead bodies floating in lakes. I like where your thinking's at. As far as Easter eggs, we know of but one. And it's probably one of the best you could include. It's the bread of peanut butter sliding down a house window, which is awesome. Don't know which house it will be, but I'm sure there will be some race to find it once the game is released. Now that we have a complete understanding, hopefully I did a rainbow graphic there, we can talk about some fun ideas I would really like to see in future updates, and some things you guys have picked out that I thought were great ideas as well. So let's go. I'd like to see more debris flying around before the storm. Maybe a wind force that sways the player a little bit when the storm is really kicking up before the aliens drop. Being able to set people and animals on fire, or even buildings and trees. Farm weapons like hoes, shovels, hammers, torches, maybe craftable. Maybe a little swing and bounce when you're in the cages, or just seeing them kind of swing and bounce. I don't know exactly how they're attached. Maybe that would just ruin my idea entirely if I had a better understanding of their architecture. I would really like to see a loading screen animation of a silhouetted tripod like running and lasering at like a little guy running in the corner. That would be really funny. If I can draw it up really quick, it'll be on screen somewhere. Also, with the loading screens, I think it would be cool to make them more in depth, like have smoke moving across the image. I'd really like to see hiding in bushes. That would be neat. People trapped in cages of downed pods to be rescued, or at least lootable dead bodies in them from the fall. By the time tripods are falling, it's, you know, late game. Maybe it would be a lifesaver to go find a fallen tripod and loot people who are in the cages, just in case you used up all your resources and can't really find any more, or just another way to find resources. And maybe it could even lead to some cool objective or side quest. Would love to see side quests. Some ideas, maybe like you help escort a child and reunite them with the family. You get like some reward, whether that be like supplies, escorting a person to a lockbox or buried treasure in the woods. They're like too scared to go by themselves, and then you like split the reward with them, or you can just be evil and kill them and then take the reward from them. Cannibals that are running out of food, and you can bring them a sacrifice, or kill them and rescue a captive that you maybe find out that they are keeping around. in their tent or camp or wherever they happen to be. Fun things like that. Side quests. So, okay, I've had this thought for a while, and this is much more like GTA-esque. This is like after the game's definitely complete and we have a lot of like space to have fun. I would love to see fanatics in this game, like alien fanatics. I would love to see them in this game and running towards and worshiping the tripods. I think it would be very funny. You could have them wearing like I Heart Alien shirts and whatnot. You could go crazy. But I just think it would be hilarious to see people that are like, you know, I believe, and running towards the tripods with no sense of fear while everyone else is bolting the other way. And then you just see them end up getting zapped or harvested or something. You can have some really funny voice lines in there as well. Prioritizing stomping when underfoot, ? To like switch things up. Maybe if you're like directly under them, they just try to step on you. That would be neat. Just a neat thing to switch up how they attack. Maybe some dust kicking up where the tripod stomps. Tripod footprints on the ground for where they've stepped. And also alien feet or handprints where they have been or touched. Maybe goo from their bodies from the inside of the tripods, leaving like a little bit of a trail on the ground. Clambering. Now, I know they have said that they're going to include climbing, like things like ladders, but I would still love to see clambering enter this game, whether it's like over a fence or a dividing wall or even onto a vehicle. Like clambering up on things that you could obviously jump to. Extra storage in vehicles like a car trunk or the bike basket. I'm thinking like 7 Days to Die. There's a really cool bike where you can just add a basket and you can add storage to that. For keybinds, I'd love to see a take all loot, a split loot and drop loot keybinds. That would be great, especially if you're working with other people. Being able to split loot is huge. Some kind of indicator that an inventory space is completely full would be nice. Maybe even just text full in the box somewhere, or the box changes color, the border or the box. Maybe it even just turns red or yellow or something like that. Something for the shields, even though they have such a really cool update from where they were, I still think having the film-like ripple come out like through the shield would be really cool. That would really push it to the next level. Would love to see that in the game. If there's coffee, maybe have it extend your energy and sprint regeneration. I'm thinking like PUBG gives you an extended sprint bar and it lets you sprint faster like during that time. I think when you die, it should say how much time you survived on the death screen. So like days, hours, and minutes. Would like to see some more NPCs, especially in the early days. I'm a huge fan of seeing lots of sprites on screen where it seems like there should be, like in a town, in a city. Just put them out there. Make it feel like I'm really panicking with the rest of civilization, and you will please me a ton. I still think of Dying Light being one of my favorite games where there's cities and lots of sprites just populating a city and street, and it's amazing how many they can throw on the screen. It would be neat to see those kinds of numbers in this game as well. The first few moments of the tripod rising from the ground and beginning to terrorize everybody. Be interesting to see then like what happens with the NPCs, if NPCs who are only near stop what they're doing, or if NPCs across the map stop what they're doing and start running. It would be really cool to see like location by location as tripods come, NPCs suddenly are like, whoa, wait, and like get out of their cars or standing near their cars, just all talking to each other and eventually start running away when they see the tripod. Keys in houses that lead to cellars, safes, cars, or sheds if you can find them. I think that would be really neat. Finding clothing or accessories that do things, like specifically a watch, like it'd be cool just to be able to find a watch and it just tells time, unless watches are broken too, which Void, you didn't really think that through. Scratch that last one. Explosives and traps. Being able to fortify a location for calculated late game engagement would be very rewarding to play if pulling off correctly. Could also see use for this when playing against other players. A Rip Carl tombstone Easter egg. Sleepy players move a little slower and vision becomes impaired, like a little vignette that like pops in like this. Boats and canoes or rafts. Potential building for rafts. Would love to see this. And I guess thinking also with rafts, fishing. Fishing would be really cool. You've abandoned the city, you got a little tent, you're living out in the wildlife, you fish, sometimes you canoe, who knows? Just cool things like that. I kind of alluded to this earlier, shooting while being picked up. Would love it. Maybe if you shoot too much, the tripod gets annoyed and slams you into the ground, or simply enlists you in the Skyrim space program. To me, it's like these things that are like the icing on the cake for games like this. I know that Raph is going for a serious tone, and I think that is definitely happening and definitely being accomplished. There are just some seriously amazing and funny things that could happen with the right amount of variety. You see a tripod launch a player into the sky would just be it'd be very amusing to me. And then obviously see this player come rocketing back towards the earth, potentially down by where you are. Making the grenade survival last chance be tense, where the player is waiting for the right animation to show to determine whether they live or died to the harvesting. If the player gets pulled into like this vat like inside the membrane, and you have this like underwater like muffled audio sound, the player begins gulping and gasping for air. You see like the syringes come out that like stab into the player and start like harvesting their fuel, their blood. Then the screen goes black from passing out, and this right here would be the moment that leads to the tension, because now the screen is black and now you're either waiting to see game over come up on screen, or you're waiting to see an animation of the character gasping and being pulled back out of the membrane. Kind of like waiting for the PlayStation 2 to start up. Police baton weapon. Other cool alien attack ideas, grabbing you, shoving you down, or kind of throwing you. I mean, these guys are big and strong. Biting you, causing a spam event. That would be kind of cool. Or charging and ramming you with their big heads. Different foot sounds on different surfaces and terrain. Clothes you unlock for reaching certain levels in the game that you can equip in the character customizer. I think this would be cool. You could also tie this into like your achievements. So, you know, maybe like a hat that says like I survived X days, I punched an alien, I kicked a chicken, who knows? Especially if you see other people like, yo, that dude punched one of the aliens, or you see like a shirt, I survived X days, like that would be neat. It'd just be a way to show off your skills. Yeah. A Toys R Us like building with a ball pit that you can hide in. A lot of these are random. They just came to me and I just wrote them down. So black smoke rising up from burned buildings and towns would be nice to see in the distance, adding chaos, just starting to see towns and areas just kind of go to waste. Oh, a backpack icon next to the inventory if you're wearing one, and also shows like a plus X for the size of space added, so like a +5, +10, and so on. Also, the X's in the inventory boxes themselves, they still just seem weird. Whenever you have something that's an X, it usually communicates to a player, can't do this, or just like not accessible. To me, it just still indicates that those spaces are unavailable. Like, here is your inventory, here's all that you can access, and then here's what you can't access because your character isn't that high of a level yet, you don't have a backpack, you don't have that perk. So they still just seem weird to me. Would rather just see them be empty boxes, would just make more sense. Royalty-free music for car radios. I just think it would be a cool detail. Some of us would just want to rock out and full throttle our way into the end of the world. The center dot turning to a line when crouching, pretty much basically like Skyrim. Hope to see more emotion from NPCs, like especially when angered or attacking you. Endgame, more violent NPCs, potentially hiding in the basements or in boarded up buildings. Also, being able to board up windows and doors. Axes being able to break through fences and doors. Dynamic probe would be really cool. It would be one of the greatest features in the game if it could be dynamic. If a tripod could roll up on any house, any location, and it could snake its way through the building and procedurally work its way through room. Since they're having a little bit of trouble getting the tripods to search through houses, I think something that would be really cool would be if they do find you in a house, they literally just rip the roof off and it could just be an animation. It would be a phenomenal moment to experience. Okay, I'll just show this one, but in certain scenes, sometimes the shaking just feels like a little bit too much. Like the character would almost be bouncing around inside of a funhouse. It's good, but I think we could scale it back a little bit and add some other things that could really communicate how heavy these steps are and how much it's rumbling buildings that you're inside of. If we look at this picture, there's just so much ghosting going on because that's how much the building is shaking in front of you. You kind of can't avoid it, you know, frame rates and whatnot, but it takes me out of immersion. While it's definitely imposing, I think what you could do is just scale it back just a little bit and add some noises. I would love to hear inside if you're in a building, creaking and dust falling, and gravel. And maybe if you're in a bigger building, something with like a cement foundation, you would hear more like rocks and cement. It's just an auditory thing, and maybe even some dust, visual dust, or rocks falling inside, or just from the ceiling, just having dust come down. I think that would create a really, really nice atmosphere. And speaking of bigger buildings, I don't think I've seen any like proper cities with skyscrapers, and I would love to see that and see the destruction of that. I've seen him go upstairs in houses, but I haven't seen him actually go into any buildings. So I would absolutely love if you had fully accessible buildings that you could go to the 5th floor or 10th floor just to have that perspective. And if you're inside of it and it gets lasered and it starts crumbling, well, then you fall with the building. I mean, that would be pretty incredible. But also being able to climb stairs high enough to be almost level with the tripod head, that would be pretty cool. So fully accessible buildings and large buildings with possibly like a full city and skyscrapers. And he did say the map will be getting updated and more things will be added. So hopefully we'll see that. Would be really cool. And now some things that you guys have said in the Discord that I think are awesome ideas. Someone in Discord had a suggestion to have character types with different buffs, and I love that idea so much. Maybe you have a medic, maybe you have a soldier, maybe you have an athlete. You could have all kinds. Each character could have like a boost or just one perk. Like with a medic, maybe they can heal other people and meds affect them twice as much, so they don't need to consume as much. Athletes sprint a little faster. Maybe soldiers can use something that the rest of the players can't. There could just be a lot of really, really cool things, and you could just always add a new character that has like a new little perk that just expands how someone might play the game. I like this one by Sky Music. It just says, have tripods without the cages, do the needle penetration, and harvesters will just put you in the cages. So I think that's really neat. So if each tripod has its own utilities, you know, like warriors have lasers, there might be some that just have needles that harvest your blood, and then there's harvesters that just put you in cages. It could determine how you escape or how you engage with that specific tripod, and I like this idea a lot because it adds a lot more variability to how you engage with the game and the enemy. Okay, I was actually thinking about this one the other day, so I'm glad Chill Shark brought it up, but the heat rays seem to have a force to them, and they really push this one car across the street in the scene. So it would be really neat to see things like that in this game. Instead of objects being deleted, them actually being pushed around if they weren't completely melted, or houses being like blown apart. Hungry Dinosaur brought up the idea of a stealth mode for tripods, and I think it's great. Being able to like turn off the engine sound and walk softer and not cause like a rumble. I think this would show a really neat, interesting, more intelligent side to the tripods. It would just make them seem even more intelligent. So there are some good ones in here about making the game more tense, and I like this one that Shulker thought up. The idea that car alarms would go off if you try to drive a parked car away. Maybe it doesn't affect every car, like you don't know if every single car is gonna have an alarm that goes off, but it just makes your decision to jump in one and drive away a little bit more intense, let's say. Okay, Tilly's got a big one here, but I think it's really important, and actually a great observation. So the game is kind of broken down into two modes of surviving through hiding and surviving through looting. Looting could be more interesting since it's what you're going to be doing the whole time. They bring up great thoughts about, homeowners being home in the beginning of the game before people are killed off, and so they would either let you in or they would try to fend you off. I mean, some doors or more doors should actually be locked, more front doors. It should be harder to get into homes in the beginning, before homes are destroyed, and you might just be able to walk through broken down walls, but also bringing up the idea to break down windows to get in that might draw attention. But even just unlocking things and unlocking chests and doors, be like a mini game like in Skyrim. This is something we're doing through a lot of the game. Let's make it really interesting, and I think it naturally would lend itself to adding more tension and adding more realism. So great thoughts. Awesome job, Tilly. This was on the back of Tilly's comment, and this is also like Shulker's comment about there being car alarms. Mikhail says, I would also add this. Certain houses can have burglar alarms, which will attract nearest tripods. So that, again, another fantastic idea. Let's throw these things in. These are great layers of caution and variability that will make this game keep getting better and better. And oh yeah, don't worry about that one. Anyway, I like this little detail that Zeno picked up. It says Raph should add the lights that bleed into the metal outside the triangles. But yeah, this could be really neat to see them have this more of a glow in their helmet, I'll call it. Cyanide wants some NVIDIA DLSS implementation, and I also agree. It's a great idea. Windowed mode as well, not just full screen, but windowed, borderless, all those options, because some of us play on different size monitors. I have an ultra wide. I usually window my games. Please lock the cursor inside the window, because nothing is worse than clicking outside of your game when you don't mean to. I really like this one from Taxi Driver. Add a feature where your character has a chance of bumping into objects and making noise if you're not looking ahead. There are certain horror games I've played, and this has jump scared me more than the actual enemy. Someone who flipped them off understands. They're like, I hate you, why'd you say this? I imagine like walking in like basements or stores, or definitely as the game progresses and things get more destroyed, there should definitely be more debris and cans and things you can kick that just makes noise. Depending on how things work out, you know, it might be really easy to hide from a probe if you just know how the probe works, right? Like you learn it, you're like, okay, I can go over here, or I can go in this cupboard or under this bed, and I'm fine, I just have to wait it out. But putting things like this in between you and safety, and you possibly screwing it all up for yourself, love it. Sergeant Insane with an awesome detail I can't believe I didn't think of, but that's why this community's here. You guys are awesome. You think of the best things. They say as the days progress, more and more clothes should appear on the ground. That, I think, is genius. You should be able to walk down a street and see like a bunch covering houses or in trees or across a field. Like it would all start coming together. You know, you see these lasers cutting through the grass, you know, charred areas, there's clothes, there's broken down cars and vehicles or weaponry or machinery. It just, all these things add up, and it really adds to some serious realism to the game. So I love it. And here's some honorable mentions. Thank you, Homelander. Yes, we should have water in the game. Thank you. This one by Gloker I thought was pretty funny. Hope it makes it in. And stop. All right, guys, that's the video. Get over here. Exciting news. This is my channel's birthday. Yeah, awesome. Super cool. I've been doing this for a year, and we've made it. We made it to memberships. So now I have memberships for you guys. So if you would like to support me on my journey to doing this full time, now you can. I just have one tier. It's just $1.99 in case it wasn't clear in the ad, the promo that I made. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed a lot of this video. There's a lot of things that I learned. That's also kind of what took me so long, was learning a few of these editing techniques, but I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. Grab yourself a badge and a membership if you want, and if you can't, if all you can afford is free, like I said earlier, then I'm just glad you're here, and I'm glad you're enjoying my content. Well, at least if you're watching this far, I assume you are. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you guys so much. Is that the war? I think the tripods are here.